we're all using this USB-C. So are you, if you want to sell it. Like, I think that's a good idea to force Apple into that. And America really should be doing the same thing. It's not a luxury anymore. It's something you have to have.
Yeah, well, you could get by without it, but the way the world works now, it would be a challenge.
Yeah, and obviously you don't need an iPhone, but
it didn't require any legislation to make every other company except for Apple adopt the USB standards, micro and USB-C and stuff. They just did it because, well, it's just the general standard. Everybody's got it. So if I'm going to build a phone these days and include some kind of wackadoodle proprietary port, well, I'm not going to sell any phones. If Apple made a refrigerator and a toilet, people would be buying them. Guaranteed. It doesn't matter what it is. If you're in the Apple cult, you buy everything Apple.
Hey Siri, iFlush.
Okay, everybody, welcome to another Kitchen Sink Microscopy. I'm Eric Rosenblatt, and like and share and subscribe and all that jazz if you want to. Yeah.
And I'm Casey Rochford, inconsequential sidekick, and I'm a German now, not officially, but for all intents and purposes, I am on the other side of the world, and you may just hear a song crafted in Germany if you hang out to the end of the episode, because that's what cool people do, and that's also what German people should do. So, what should we discuss with a multicultural viewpoint?
Well, I don't know if this would be multicultural, but it's certainly planetary, like it's all the world. Mm-hmm. Do you think Apple is a cult, or there's a cult around the Apple Corporation?
Absolutely, and maybe not in the sense of like anything dangerous per se, or life-threatening. Let's say,
yeah.
I mean that. Very much a certain sense of being holier than thou. Apple products,
Yep.
Being willing to just pay for the name.
Because
it's arguable if they're really better. Like they might be flashier, but is that better?
Well, it goes deeper than just like people prefer Apple because of the perceived quality. I mean, there really is. I mean, I wouldn't say it ticks all the boxes that make something a cult, but it ticks some of them. I mean, even if even leaving, abandoning Apple, you'd be shunned by your fellow Apple brethren for doing that. If you go to Windows or Linux or something like that.
There are very few people that go between the two, you either jump in one end of the pool or the other. And
yep. You're all in. Yeah. You're either all in or not. I very rarely see people that, I mean, other than obviously, like say you work somewhere and you're an Apple person, you're an Apple fanboy or whatever, and everybody's using Windows, well, at your work, well, you can't not do that. But if you look at someone's house, they may have Apple everything.
Yeah.
And
my biological father and that whole family me excluded, are Apple. So it's definitely not a genetic thing. But we always give each other shit. Like if something goes wrong with their phones, I'm like, oh yeah, well, Apple,
Mm-hmm.
and vice versa.
It is kind of bizarre though, like how that happens. And
Yeah,
I mean, I don't see that with very many other products that, like, for instance, um, Samsung, right? Like, oh, somebody buys, they get a Samsung like Galaxy whatever phone, and they love it, and those are good phones. Um, but you don't see that very same person buying, like, making all their TVs be Samsung, and like every Samsung product they could get is, that's they fill their house with just Samsung. But Apple people do that.
that's one of the ticked cult boxes, though, because Apple is very much like, well, if you want this aspect to work, you have to buy the other Apple product.
Yeah.
We only talk to Apple products.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and yeah, they have proprietary charge cords, unlike literally every other device on the face of the planet. Everybody's using like USB-C or micro USB, but Apple's the one company that doesn't.
Still doing that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Although I think that's going to change given some EU policy thing or whatever that's making it so you have to use USB-C. But even then, they're probably still going to hang on to it where they can.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, everything is all proprietary, and yeah, I'm sure if Apple made a refrigerator and a toilet, people would be buying them. Like, guaranteed. It doesn't matter what it is. If you're in the Apple cult, you buy everything Apple.
Hey Siri, iFlush.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know. But I think Apple's practices, their marketing practices, are what does that. Like the way they build the image of the company makes it seem almost godlike.
Yeah.
Like Steve Jobs is revered as this like holy man.
Yeah.
And I mean, he has kind of the same sort of following of sorts like Elon Musk does. There's these like disciples who follow, and whatever he does, it must be great. Steve Jobs, that's his idea. It must be great, and that is, I mean, it certainly feels cult-like.
Yeah.
And the way Apple markets their stuff makes it feel like you're not just buying a product, you're joining an exclusive club, or it's somehow special. You're now special, that you're part of this little family or something.
Yeah. And I feel like, I don't know if I really have any data to back this up, but I feel like the new product that comes out every year, like let's say the iPhone or whatever, the Apple people are more inclined to be compelled, let's say, to upgrade their phone every year.
Yeah.
Gotta get the new one because look at the amazing feature they've added to the camera or something.
Yeah.
It's like really not even that important. And then it's kind of funny because these Apple users will be like, look what my Apple phone can do. And I'll be like, yeah, I can do that. And they're like, what?
Yeah, I've been able to do that for 10 years, man.
Yeah. What do you mean you can do that? Prove it. Show me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, for sure. And people they're willing to like stand in line in the rain or the snow for hours and hours and hours just to get this new product and pay a premium for it. Like nothing that Apple makes is affordable, I would say. It's not like, I mean, compared to similar products, it's always more expensive.
Oh yeah. Well, and they don't want you to work on it.
No.
Remember when we had our business and people would like be like, well, do you guys work on Apple computers? And we're kind of like, I mean, you really can't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the information, it's kind of closed, and they clearly build their products to not be worked on.
Yeah.
That, like, it's built in a way that makes it difficult, if not impossible, to do any work on. And that, okay, now I'm not to dump on Apple exclusively, like, because there are other companies that do the same thing, and certain things, like when it comes to scaled down products like phones or whatever, well, yeah, making it serviceable would make it bulkier. So I see why, in some ways that makes sense. But a lot of other products that Apple makes, yeah, getting parts, good luck. And Apple is kind of like Nintendo when it comes to draconian legal battles. When they try to get people for getting these, like, counterfeit parts when it's just simply an aftermarket part. Like,
a minute microscopy about something related to this, right? Like,
to Nintendo, probably.
no, something about self-repair.
Oh,
repair,
the right to repair movement. Yeah. And that's those people that are involved in the right to repair movement are trying to, like, make that practice illegal, essentially, so that companies, like, essentially open products up so that it's allowed to create an alternative third party replacement part or whatever. Because you don't see that happening from any other company, really, like, at least tech company.
Yeah.
Samsung isn't, like, suing people who are importing batteries that fit their phone, but Apple definitely is. Like, replacement screens or whatever. Now, I get it if it says on the box Apple, right? Like, it looks genuine, but it isn't. I could see them being, like, resistant to that, because from a company's standpoint, it does hurt their reputation if you buy something that says Apple and it turns out to be shitty. Because now
you get to charge somebody based on the brand,
and
it's not actually the brand.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I could see that being a thing, but yeah, it goes further than that. They go a lot further.
Yeah. I mean, it's not to say that Apple doesn't have certain rights as a company to operate in a way any other company would, but it's those little things that kind of go beyond. A lot of it is the proprietary stuff. Like, I mean, yeah, every company is totally within their rights to have certain proprietary things.
Oh, for sure.
But when there's, like, I don't know, just kind of like a general agreement that we're all going to use USB-C and make it just nice and convenient to, like, at least within a country, like the EU is going to do, like you said, like, hey, we're all using this USB-C. So are you, if you want to sell it, like, I think that's a good idea to force Apple into that. And America really should be doing the same thing, because it is kind of fucked up, like, for something like that, like something that really affects the usability of something that we all depend on nowadays, like a cell phone is no longer
optional
luxury.
Yeah.
It's not a luxury anymore. It's something you have to have.
Yeah, well, you could get by without it, but the way the world works now, it would be a challenge.
Yeah, and obviously you don't need an iPhone, but like,
well, and it does make sense.
You don't get to decide how consumers purchase what they want to purchase and stuff. So
it does kind of strike me as odd that it didn't require any, like, legislation to make every other company except for Apple adopt the USB standards, that, micro and USB-C and stuff. They just did it because, well, it's just the general standard. Everybody's got it. So if I'm going to build a phone these days and include some kind of wackadoodle proprietary port, well, I'm not going to sell any phones. People are going to be like, well, that's stupid. Why would I buy that thing? Now I got to get your charge cable when I have my own special setup at my house. I got all charge cables all over, and now I got to buy a whole bunch of new ones. No, that's stupid. But here's the thing, and this is, Apple gets away with it because it's a cult, or it has that cult-like practice. People are willing to bite the bullet, so to speak, in that regard, and like accept that. Like, even though it's a huge negative, it doesn't matter because people are so brainwashed that they're willing to accept that. They're basically like, whatever Apple produces, that must be great. That's what we're going to go. I'll change my entire life now. Oh, I bought a new phone. Now I need all new charge cables and docking stations and whatnot. Like, I have all new stuff. Perfectly fine. I'll spend $1,500 on accessories. Oh, because Apple. And a good example too is that, like, in the help forums and stuff, or Apple's assistants and things like that, where if something's broken that was clearly a manufacturing defect, Apple tells their customers that it's their fault and they believe it. Like, you're just holding it wrong. That's not, that was a thing. Or the bend gate, right, where the phones would bend and stuff, and they were like, oh no, it's you're just, you're using it wrong. We didn't build it poorly.
You've got macular degeneration.
Yeah. Like, it couldn't possibly be that we made a mistake. It's got to be you, the consumer. And they get away with it. People continue to buy Apple products, even though this has happened time and time again. And yeah, it's like, nobody else could get away with that. Like, Samsung couldn't. If they put out a string of shitty phones, well, people would not buy Samsung anymore. They'd probably they'd switch to Apple, I guess, but you don't see the opposite happening at all, even though Apple just shits on their customers over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and they just take it. It's like they love the abuse or something. But I mean, again, that's things that happen in cults.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, there is a little bit of a parallel to Scientology, I think. Like,
yeah.
when you look at the iStore, it's, I don't know, it's all bright and white, and everybody in there is, like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've never actually set foot in one. I've just, like,
oh, I have, and
it has the event horizon of it, like, and looked inside, and it looked creepy.
I've been in there, and it feels very much like a church.
Yeah.
Like, there's a very holy sort of feel. Like, it's so minimalist, right? That there's really nothing there except for this, like, a central area with just the devices, like, propped up on a pedestal. Like, they're the only thing. You go into any other phone store or wherever, like, accessory place, and it's just, there's shit everywhere. There's all kinds of stuff. Like, you go places and they're kind of like Radio Shack. There's a little bit of everything all over the place. Apple, they've done away with all that. And yeah, it is sort of feels, it's very quiet in there too. Like, it's just, I don't know. I mean, I get that they're trying to create this sort of atmosphere or something like that, but it goes a little further. Like, it feels creepy to me as an outsider, a non-Apple person.
I mean, does this happen with any of their competitors at all? I mean, moving beyond Samsung, there's, Microsoft, on the computer end of things. They even ventured into phones at one point, but
yep.
I don't think they are anymore, right?
No.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember having Windows phones, like the HTC or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, those were cool, but they just didn't work very well.
Yeah. But, I mean, could you also argue that there's, like, a Windows cult?
Well, there could be. And I mean, there's certainly people who revere Bill Gates similarly to Steve Jobs. But there's just as many Windows users who detest the guy. So it's like they kind of begrudgingly just use it. And I think it's like, okay, well, I mean, it just, this is the platform that my computer comes with, and I'm just used to it. And they're like, and Windows people, like, I'm still running Windows 7. I mean, only recently did I change to Windows 7 from XP, and I think there's a lot of users like that. If you look, I'm sure there's numbers about it. how many people use the different versions of OS, but I don't think there's the same sort of thing because, like, again, there's still people running XP right now who aren't like going out and buying the newest product and stuff. They're just kind of hanging on, like, well, it still works. I guess I'll just keep using it. And so there are probably some people.
That's the cult-like thing, because Microsoft makes you think the world will end if you don't update to Windows 11 or whatever they're on now. Like,
yeah, I think it's 11 now.
Yeah. And sometimes it feels like you kind of get forced into it. Like, they're like, you can no longer delay this. When you power off your computer, it will wake up in Windows 11.
Yeah.
Like there comes that point eventually. Like, I'm actually surprised you're still capable of being on Windows 7.
7 doesn't have that that kind of like trickery forced update thing, but 10 does. And I have a Windows 10 machine that is, every time I power it up, it's telling me like, oh, it looks like you can't bypass it, but you can. They make it, they kind of like, it's like those fake ad kind of things. It's like, oh yeah, you have to click here, but you don't. And that is kind of annoying. And that's a very frustrating thing about Microsoft and Windows in general. And I think Microsoft, so here's a little bit of a difference between the two companies. While Apple does produce the OS for its systems, it also makes the hardware. Whereas Microsoft in general doesn't make hardware. They only make the software and they license it, and that's it. Like, I have a Microsoft wireless laser mouse and I love it. Probably the best mouse ever made. But other than that, I mean, they really don't make a lot of hardware. So they don't even build the computers. They sort of just build the software, and all these different companies install it. And then they kind of tweak it to their own particular needs, which is one beneficial thing about Windows, that is the extensibility. Like, you can modify almost everything. Whereas with Apple stuff, it's very limited. Like, the customizability is very, very limited. Microsoft does make it very difficult to make modifications. There's a lot of stuff that's nested deep in the registry, and unless you really know where to go, good luck. It's not like there's a whole bunch of, like a control panel. You could just say, oh, this thing, I want to turn that off. No, you got to like go in the registry and like type in a hexadecimal number or something like that, or add the new field in there. But at least it's possible. It
used to be a lot easier. Yeah. Like something any user could do, but yeah, now you need a little more.
Well, there's third-party tools that'll do it for you. So they kind of like incorporate all the common things that people want to do, and then you just check a checkbox then. But I
feel like a lot of that probably has become unnecessary anyway, and it's more beneficial for the company to provide a ubiquitous, usable tool. Like, an idiot or a genius in computers could use just as effectively. Like, I can see an argument for that, because we have cell phones and stuff that kind of have taken the place of computers in most ways.
In a lot of ways.
Plenty of people with particular set of needs can get by just fine without a computer now.
Yeah. Well, because the phone is now a computer.
Yeah.
Essentially.
You can do all kinds of things, now, it used to be you couldn't take a photograph of something. You had to photocopy it at the FedEx store or whatever.
Yeah.
And now it's totally fine to just take a picture with your cell phone and send it off. It takes 2 seconds. It's free.
And you can edit things within the phone, whereas it wasn't possible with, phones with cameras didn't really have editing capability built in, and now they do. Yeah. And although there's something to be said for the desktop experience, like typing a lot. If you're typing a bunch of shit, you don't want to be using a phone. The screen is typically way too small to do anything like advanced, like and they're not really good for certain types of gaming. Obviously, like first-person shooters would really suck on a phone. You really need a desktop for that.
Yeah. Precision photo editing things.
Yeah. Graphic design, that kind of thing. If you're trying to do design work, you need a big ass screen to work on to get the details and stuff. A tablet can sometimes suffice, but even then, that's still not a phone. So there's still a place
we do, like that.
Yeah. Oh, that would be impossible on a phone. That would drive me up the wall. Oh, yeah. But I mean, you're right. It has taken the place for a lot of common tasks.
Yeah, like the simple stuff.
Yeah, the day to day, even just like perusing the internet, looking up an article or something is typically done on a phone now.
But then you've got like Linux too.
Yep, and that's the one that people don't often think about that much, which is wild because it's very usable, especially now. Like a lot of the variants of Linux have gotten to be quite user friendly. And a lot of software now.
Ubuntu or whatever, that's basically Windows.
Oh, well, yeah, that one's pretty close. There's Linux Mint is one that I like, but there's so many possibilities. There's so many options, and they're fairly easy to test out. And typically, Linux costs nothing. There's a few versions that are pay, but they're specialized and they're few and far between generally. But a lot of software now, like even games, come for like Apple and Windows and Linux. And also we got to consider too, Linux runs the entire internet, almost with only very few exceptions. Every single server is running Linux. Everything, the whole entire internet is powered off Linux. So it's obviously capable. It's functional.
Is there an entire Windows OS for servers at some point?
There is. Yeah, there's versions of Windows Server. Yeah, and those don't get used as often for like web stuff. More for like internal corporate stuff. Like that, people will use Windows Server, for their own internal stuff. But the cost, I think, when you're trying to say, like, if you're like a host, like a web host company, the cost for Windows would be astronomical for the number of servers you have versus Linux, which costs you just time to configure. And there's a lot of out of the box stuff where you basically have like a web server package that there you go, boom, done. So that's one of the reasons. Plus Linux is also very light. Like it's not power hungry, whereas obviously Windows and Apple both are fairly power hungry. Even though actually Apple OS is like underneath it is actually Unix, like a form of Unix. At least it used to be, which is basically similar to Linux. Like they're brethren. So actually, in a way, Apple's also kind of running Linux, sort of. Because so Linux is the core operating system, but then you've got like essentially front ends that you can use. So like your visual experience, your interface can vary all over the place. And another advantage of Linux is customizability. I mean, you can, if you want, take the code and change it and recompile it and change your OS. Whereas obviously Apple and Windows both, they're not open source. You can't read the source code and modify it. Like it's closed. Yeah. And so that's kind of a nice thing. I mean, that's maybe not that appealing to a lot of people because it does get technical. And so if you're not like a coder or anything, then that's
over my head.
Yeah. But the advantage with that is that it allows people who are coders to create new variations. And that's why there's so many of them.
Yeah.
I mean, there's probably thousands of Linux variants out there and hundreds. There's a lot of the visual side, like what it looks like to you. Because I mean, in general, Linux at its core is just, it's text based, essentially, kind of like DOS almost.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, as far as cults go, though, like, of course, there's people that prefer Linux. There's people that prefer Windows. Mm-hmm. When it comes to Apple, catapults to a new level.
Yes.
Like holier than thou. And
Well, okay. So I do see people with like the little Linux penguin guy, like bumper stickers or something on their car, like in their window.
uh,
I don't see any like Windows or like Microsoft Edge logos that people have in their car showing off that they use these things. But Apple, all over the place. So many cars I see have that little Apple all over. Like, look at me. I'm special. Like, I use Apple. Like generally when I see the Linux logo, it's the animal is like taking a bite out of an apple, and so like holding an apple with a bite taken out of it.
that's awesome.
Those are the ones that I do see fairly commonly. So it's more like a joke than anything. But yeah, I mean, I see people put Apple stickers all over their stuff, and that is kind of bizarre.
It's a total eyesore.
Eyesore, lowercase I, of course. Oh man, and that is a funny one too. Is like, why does everything have that format? Like, I this, I that.
There's no I in Apple.
Well, no, it goes way back to like the 90s, essentially, when the internet was kind of a thing, and it was like you'd have an I in front of something indicating it was like internet, basically. Like it was an internet thing. And so it's kind of funny that even though it's so passe now to put I in front of something, Apple still does it.
Yeah.
Like it's weird how persistent that's been and how people like don't even think about it.
Yet another cult thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like appeal to tradition.
Tradition, yeah. It kind of is.
Interesting. Yeah, I always kind of wondered about that. I wasn't sure if it was information superhighway,
yeah,
internet, or
both. It's both. It's like something that used to be used to indicate that something was like an internet or whatever thing.
Huh.
Yeah, kind of strange.
Huh.
But Apple's the only one still doing that. Man.
Do you ever think they'll like kind of bend to the whims of society and be like, okay, you know what, we'll play on the same playing field as everybody else?
I could maybe with like change of management, essentially, that maybe, and certainly if they started to lose market share, they might be like, hey, maybe look at this. It's the whole maker movement and the right to repair stuff, and all these people are passionate about that. What if we made say like a computer or a phone that was built to be worked on, and that's our selling point? Is now that no one else is doing it, right? We're the only ones.
Such a smart move.
Yeah.
Maybe when Steve Jobs returns to bring the Apple users to heaven
as a deep fake, right? He's like an AI generated hologram or something.
Check out our last episode.
Yeah, over there probably. Yeah. I could see that.
Side of the world, so now I have to point.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Up is down now, or well, left is right, I guess. Yeah, you're not in Australia. Otherwise, you'd be falling. You hit your head on the ceiling, falling and stuff. I could see them maybe doing that. Although I don't know. So far, it's working so well for them that they probably won't change unless something drastic comes up, like circumstances change majorly.
Yeah.
Like it'd be really cool if there was like an open source Apple product. Like, oh yeah, it's like a tinkerer's phone. You have access to everything, and here's all the repair manuals and like the schematics and all the stuff, and it's modular. So it's like, you can kind of change it however you like. That would be cool. And there are phones like that already. There's phones that are like absolutely built to be worked on and fiddled with.
You know what? We should just start our own phone company and make stuff that has the the Apple experience and the Apple look. We call it Apple Sing, which is like Swedish for orange.
Yeah.
For some reason. And
well, we could make our product start with an A for ALTAiR, and so it'd be like the A phone, the A pod. Yeah.
unfortunate that we use the lowercase I, and that's already.
Oh, I know. Damn it.
We now just like use only lowercase, and all the I's are capitalized.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be funny. I mean, it'd be nice to see more products that are open source like that. But Apple, it's very cult like. I can't think of any other product that really carries that kind of pull to people, where they get. I mean, maybe like a clothing brand like Nike or something. I could see people like, oh, I only buy Nike stuff.
Yeah, people have preferences and stuff like that, but it's not like. I mean, it's not like those clothes only. Like, if you need to buy a replacement zipper, you can only get like a Nike zipper.
Right?
Yeah. Like
exactly. Or you can only, if you have to sew something, you can only use Nike thread to stitch a hole.
Yeah. I mean, like, what's the point in going through that kind of effort,
Yeah. Well, and here's the difference too, is like Nike, if they made a toilet, nobody would buy it. But if Apple made a toilet, it would fly off the shelves. Guaranteed. Like I could absolutely see that. And honestly, like whatever they made, they could make the most wacky, like if they made like an eye whisk for your kitchen, people would be buying it. They would totally buy it. Like if they could get their hands on the next Apple thing, they totally would. And that definitely makes makes it very cult like, I think. Or kind of maybe a bit of a religion of sorts.
So you'll probably know this better than me, but there's people that claim that Apple is made better, uses better parts. What are your thoughts on that?
They're made. Okay, now they're not made poorly necessarily. They're made about like any other premium product. I'd say they do a good job of building their products. I can say that, like, for most of their stuff, obviously they have their ups and downs, but for the most part, what they put together is pretty solid. And the OS too is pretty solid and fairly reliable and simple and easy to use. So I mean, they do succeed at that, but I wouldn't say they're like, $700 more better,
right? I'll say that like the magnetic power connection is a good idea.
Oh,
I mean, the Microsoft Surface uses that also.
Yep, exactly. And actually, there's aftermarket little USB things you can stick on there and like do it yourself to any device like that. I actually used to do that till I lost my little magnet thing. I got to get another one. But that actually, it's a great idea. It should actually, every device should be using that, honestly.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's some kind of patent bullshit that's like, oh, well, this really good one that works really well. Nope, nobody else can make it because only Apple can make it. Except now they made it for a while and they don't make it anymore. So like,
oh really?
I don't think a lot of devices don't use that. They use like the lightning connection or whatever, which is kind of just like a plug, very similar to USB-C. Actually, it's just the little contacts are on the outside instead of on the inside. But like they had a good idea. Now it's just on the shelf.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well,
probably because Microsoft started doing it and they were like, oh, we can't do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Should have had a better patent.
I know.
Yeah, fucking patents.
Oh, that we need to do a whole episode just about that.
The world needs more Nikola Teslas.
Yep, absolutely. definitely. Well, yeah, we should put that on the list to do an episode about like patents, copyrights, and things like that.
I think we've done an episode on it.
I don't know. We have so many episodes now.
Yeah, 4+ years into it, it's hard to.
Yeah, like an episode a week. Like, well, technically two, because did we do a mini microscopy or a whole episode? I don't remember.
We definitely have a lot of material.
Oh yeah.
When I tell people about the show now, they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna look that up," and I'll be like, "Yeah." So just be aware, we've got like over 400 videos already.
Yeah. I know. I feel like we need to categorize things a little bit more, like break things apart a little bit in our like the videos page or whatever. Have a few more categories or something.
There's only so many we can put on the page. I mean, you can have as many categories as you want, but as far as featuring,
oh yeah,
like playlists, let's say, there's only so many you can put. But yeah, definitely, like, if we really should make this this channel be more open source. And this is probably a good point to mention that we're bringing on a third person in an attempt to
broaden our scope.
Yeah, not only that, but to like provide for if there's a scheduling conflict, given that we're across the world now.
Yeah.
Like if one of us can't be available at a certain time, we still want to make sure that we provide content to our loyal fan. And so that will be a new addition, and it would be really cool to see people, fans of the show, like submit their own. I don't know, like, what would you call it? Like, fan fiction, but
their own videos
actually add to our canon, right?
Yeah.
If you make your own minute microscopy and send it to us, and it's awesome, well, sure as shit, we'll put it up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not a bad idea. Yeah. I think, especially mini microscopies would be a little easier to deal with than a whole like hour-long episode somebody submits.
Right. Yeah.
But that would be great. Like we would love to see that.
That said, I mean, if you have a whole hour-long episode with a friend and you guys jive this way, sure, yeah, send it away. Like,
why not? And yeah, we may make a separate, just so people can like, know who, like, oh, this is a third party one. We may make that be in a separate section, but we can still upload it to the channel.
Yeah,
because I think it'd be great.
This is like an idea. This is it's not even something we can claim ownership to. It's just conversation.
Exactly. Well, and I'm a supreme believer in open source things, like, and I've always said, like, these are just my ideas that I made, but go ahead and expand on it. Like, I don't care. It's not, doesn't really affect me, honestly.
Yeah.
And so
we mentioned our names at some point.
Yeah, like, hey, this was inspired by this or whatever. Or, if you submit something, obviously that's different. But I'd like to see this kind of become, like, grow in scope to cover more things and more people be involved. Like, I think this is more, it's not a channel, it's a concept.
Yeah.
That's kind of it. We just happen to be, this channel is representing that concept, but the concept exists beyond that. And I'd like to see it reach further.
Oh yeah. Like, I don't know, the day that kitchen sink microscopy or KSM becomes like a verb.
Yeah.
Like, that would be so cool. Like, oh man, we totally KSM'd that.
Yep. Oh yeah, or it becomes like I forgot what the term is, but like Kleenex, you know,
Oh yeah, yeah,
where it just even a non Kleenex product is just called Kleenex, you know, like that.
yeah.
Any show that,
The brand name supplants the name of the actual thing.
yep,
Yeah.
yeah, like where any show that's like ours is just a KSM, you know. That would be great someday. Someday.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Well, I think that we've covered quite a bit there, and we could probably call that wrap it up, I guess. And yeah, so
Got a lot done today.
got a lot done today. Yeah. All right. Well, yeah. If you have thoughts about Apple and Microsoft and Linux and whatnot, put them down in the comments and have a conversation about it. And yeah, and well, there should be a song queuing up right now, probably. So enjoy that. Now, if I could edit that and like have a song that has a beat with that exact timing, like come in, that'd be funny. A little tricky to do, probably. But yeah. So yeah, everybody, thanks for sticking around with us for 40 plus minutes, and yeah, have a good day or good night, and take it easy.